Good morning. Thank you for having me. A couple weeks ago, I was asked to present at this conference, and I was thinking about what did I want to speak about? What was I going to help translate what Microsoft was doing to help, there, the presentation's up, to help communicate. So I thought about transforming business with artificial intelligence. So the first thing I was thinking about is several hundred years ago in the 18th century, if you would have thought about flying from Poland to Seattle, you would have thought that would never be possible, that you could do that in one day, that it would have been magic. But now we look at AI, and a lot of people are concerned about what is AI? Is it some magical thing? In reality, I think it's just the next step in evolution. One example that AI has directly interacted with me is that in Alabama, I own a home in which there was a tornado, and there was a huge rainstorm and hailstorm. And I was thinking after this, I would have to travel from Seattle to Alabama to actually check on the home because I had a renter in it. And as part of that, I was concerned about the roof. There was damage, hail damage. But I was thinking about, well, what am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to take time off from work. I'm going to have to fly there. I'm going to have to take a bunch of expenses. And as I was thinking about it, I was like, how am I going to put all this together? All of a sudden, I got an email from my insurance company saying that they had worked with the U.S. government getting satellite imaging. And they had an image of my house before the tornado hailstorm, and then they had one after. And they could actually use machine learning to determine that, yes, there was damage on my roof. They were actually able to measure the dimensions of the roof to figure out what was the actual damage, and they were actually able to figure out what was the cost associated with that. And then they told me, this would be your claim value. Here are some companies that we suggest you speak to, and how you could actually proceed the claim. I never actually had to leave my bedroom in Seattle to actually manage this claim. It saved me time, it saved me money, and it made it efficiently. This is one way that AI is actually transforming people's lives. So as we go along, but why now? There's roughly within the next 3 years, $40 billion worth of revenue that could directly be generated from AI. That's the work that we're all working in now. But the interesting question is why? So first thing, over the last 40 years, we've been working on AI. And today, we've made significant processes in our deep neural networks. That is due to a couple of things. One, compute cloud. By moving things into the cloud, we were able to create high availability compute. Now we actually have GPUs, FPGAs, other technology that will allow you to compute the necessary speeds for AI to actually be beneficial. But another offset of this is data. We need huge amounts of data in order to actually calculate and for AI to be beneficial. One of the things that we actually are benefiting from. But the last thing is out of this $40 billion worth of direct revenue, there's an estimated $1.2 trillion of opportunity business that will generate out of this $40 billion, which is pretty amazing if you could think that out of 40 billion direct revenue that you could generate $1.2 trillion worth of economic value. So first thing I want to go over is 2 case studies. Why AI is benefiting in real life. The first one is for the city of Los Angeles, and the second one is one at Microsoft that I've had direct experience in. So first, let's go over to the city of Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles has roughly 4 million inhabitants. As part of those inhabitants, they need a way to communicate and distribute services more effectively. So they partnered with Microsoft, and they created what they call the City Hall Information Internet Personality, in short, CHIP. This was basically a chatbot. And at first, the chatbot was designed to take about 200 feedback responses. Within 2 months, it grew from 200 to over 900. But some of the benefits of Chip was the direct response was the number of emails coming into the city requesting information on services had reduced by 50% over that 2.5 months. Next, what was really great about it is it had a subsequential benefit. First, employee morale. It radically, dramatically increased because people felt they were working on more important things. No longer were they focused on mundane tasks. They were actually focused on high-valued and unusual cases, and it brought benefit to their everyday work things. So they've actually seen productivity increase and personal enrichment with the job increase. The second one is guided selling powered through AI. This is one I worked on over the past year with Microsoft. As we digitally transformed sales, we thought about how are we going to move from the old adage of sales into this new world. So we started working with the various teams in the corporation, and we said, let's move the corporation to an AI-powered solution. So what we say is, we have this, what we call the daily recommender. And basically what it does is, as a seller logs on, it helps them identify who they're going to contact, when they should contact them, and why. So as you can see here, I have a bunch of recommendations. It says I need to various companies and discuss various things. It gives me reasoning. It makes it in plain English, natural language. With machine learning, you get a lot of ones and numbers that come out. But here, we put it in plain English. They have a renewal. They have a true-up. They have a cross-sale or an upsell. Simple. There's the reason why we provide them some basic reasons on why they should go do this. But most important is we've given them the ability to provide us feedback. So with any AI system, you really need feedback in order. So we set the system up to take implicit and explicit feedback. The explicit feedback is they can go schedule a task, they can go do something. They can actually snooze it, just like your calendar when you get a meeting invite or a task. You can say, snooze it, I don't want to work on this right now. I'm going to go work on it in a couple of days or so. And then you can delete it, saying, this one's really not that great. Let's focus on something more. So as we went through, we started doing this, and we said, well, we need to establish some ways to actually understand how we're going to do this and what is success to us. So what we went through is we set up these success factors. So the first three on the left are about organizational and about communication. It was about empowering people. Not only did our executive management need to say, hey, we want to transform it, but we had to get our partners aligned. We had to get the managers. We had to get the individuals involved that would use the system. Because one thing you'll find out in any development tool is if you don't get the lowest people actually using the system, it was worthless. So that really helped us because some of our users that would actually be using the system had been in sales and marketing for 20 plus years. And they thought that they knew everything. So we engaged them and asked them, how can we make your life better? How do we empower you to be better at your job? And what we found out is most sellers were spending around 28 hours a week just figuring out who to call. So this system that we ran helps them do that. The next thing that we actually did is we said, let's start small. Let's not try to, resolve world peace or world hunger at day one. We're going to go start with small little things. We're going to bite it off. We're going to take it, and we're going to prove the value, and we're going to continue to go. Again, we worked with sellers. We worked with some experienced sellers on what they did, but we also looked at younger sellers, what they needed to be successful. We did early experience planning. We went through, and we actually went through and planned it. The other thing that we did here, what's really important is these last 2 points, is run it as a profit and loss. Like, how are you going to actually do it? Building an AI system, but not actually showing business revenue was not beneficial. So we actually had to show that we were going to actually generate revenue out of this. And last point here is we wanted to start quickly and deploy fast. If we found something that wasn't working within our modeling efforts, we quickly dropped it and moved on to the next thing. So don't be afraid to do that. So as we continue, what we did is we said, how are we going to build all this technology? So at Microsoft, what we started doing is we started looking at all the different things that we needed in order to deliver this technology. We had a data platform, and that's our basic fundamental. We ended up spending a huge amount of time just getting the data together and organized in a way that we can actually utilize it effectively. And then we started looking at what type of compute do we want? How did we want to use it? Did we want to use a GPU? Did we want to go to FPGA? What was the calculations and how often did it calculate? What did we do for advanced machine learning? Were we going to use a multi-layer deep neural network? What type? Were we using reinforced learning, supervised versus unsupervised learning? What were we going to do? And then we started putting on cognitive services and bots and stuff. So what does this really mean when we come down to it? So we broke it down into 3 basic parts. We have the services layer, we have the infrastructure, and then we have the tools. So first, you have the services. You have pre-built AI. So what's great about the tooling that we have is that you can actually go out, and I've actually used these cognitive services to actually build new technology. So we have dedicated teams building speech to text, visualization, and a bunch of cognitive services. The next thing is our bot services, and then our Azure machine learning. But no service can be delivered without an infrastructure. So down here, what we actually went back is, and down here at the CPU FPGA level, we started with CPU, we went to move to GPUs, and now we're moving into FPGAs. So then we actually added the LAN, the compute. One thing that I really enjoyed over the last year is using the data lake, which the data lake allowed us to bring in huge amounts of data. Literally, we were bringing in terabytes of data. And what you'll notice is, even at Microsoft, we ran a hybrid cloud. We have on-prem servers that were running constantly, and we had to move our data into our lake. Well, were we going to copy all the data, or did we just bring the data in that we actually needed at runtime? So we decided that there was 2-phase approach. One is we bring data in for short-term for modeling, and then long-term we would actually bring in only the data for at runtime. So Data Lake gave us the ability to utilize USQL queries and other tools to actually build the data and actually to flatten the data out and bring it into a way. And then we actually brought in the compute, and that actually gave us the horsepower to actually program and everything. And then lastly, how are we actually going to build this technology? So we started out with the tools, and what's great is you have Visual Studios for now. Now you can actually install Anaconda straight into Visual Studio. But me, I like Jupyter Notebooks, I like Python. So I may try to do something different, but I can go back to C# and I can integrate it all. You also have the Azure Machine Learning Workbench. The other thing is we actually, as Satya Nadella has done, he's opened up the company to open sources and bringing in other people's technology. So we brought in third-party TensorFlow and others, which are great tools. So as we go along, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about today was the ethics of AI. Back in 2016, Microsoft, along with Google, Facebook, IBM, and a very myriad group of corporations around the world set up the partnership on AI. And as part of that, we ended up coming out with our own ethics review panel within Microsoft. And we set up these basic structure about how do we think about ethics in AI? How are we going to deliver it? So the first thing we started out was accountability. We empowered every employee within the company to be accountable for the technology that they were writing, they were building, and deliver. It's not just at the executive level, but all the way down to the developers and the program managers. Next thing, we wanted to talk about transparency. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are we using your data? And when are we using it? How are we going to anonymize it? How are we going to actually work with individuals to make sure that we were being transparent and appropriate with your data? Then once these 2 main structures of our ethics principles were laid, we layered on the top of these 4, starting with fairness. When we talk about fairness, what do we talk about? So let's take an example. In the UK, our researchers are working with several health organizations on oncology studies. And as part of this, they're actually looking at how do we treat individuals fairly, no matter their demographics, financial ability to pay. How do we go through and we use this? So in medical research, we're looking at how do we better improve cancer treatment, but not just for a select group, but for everybody. How do we use it? Next thing is reliability and safety. So a couple months ago, I'm not sure if you've seen, back in Arizona, there was an auto accident with Uber self-driving car, killed somebody. So when I'm building an AI system for sales and marketing, so if the system goes offline, no big deal, no one dies. But if you have an autonomous car that's driving down the road and that has to make decisions in real time that could end up into the death of individuals, you have to make sure that you build your system in a reliable manner and that it's done safely. But what you also have to do is one thing that we talked about in internal is you have to have a human in the loop. You have to be able to take the AI offline in case something's going wrong. So that was one of the critical points that we picked out. The next thing is about privacy and security. I think we're like 2 days away from GDPR implementation, and we really thought back, how are we going to do privacy and security? What are we going to do? How do we utilize this data in a way that can still ensure that it's done appropriate? And the idea of synthetic data came up. How do we anonymize the data? How do we take away the human element but still able to deliver AI in an appropriate manner? And then lastly is inclusiveness. So when we talk about inclusiveness, we want to talk about how do we make sure that everybody can utilize the technology that we're developing at Microsoft. How does people with disabilities benefit from this? How do we open the marketplace for everybody? The AI shouldn't be just available for a select group, but it should be available for everybody that we build. So as we go through, we built these pillars. And then we go through ethic review panels, we go through our privacy and security reviews, but these are the questions coming out. So as we leave today, I encourage each one of you to go back to your individual companies and talk about how are you going to deliver AI? How is your company going to be transparent? How are they going to be fair to different groups of individuals? How do you remove the unbiased, the bias? Within your modeling expert? How do you anomalize the data in such a way that it treats people fairly? Then how are you going to secure it? So that was the end of my speech. I thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a great day.